Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry, send me you time. Arsenal. Come on, you gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Happy Wednesday. We are edging closer, aren't we, to that North London derby. Big game coming up at the weekend. Arsenal really needing, I think, to put another 3 points on the board after the previous Premier League round where, of course, Manchester City, I should say, not Manchester United. They're miles off it. Manchester City closed that deficit on us to just 4 points. So there is a little bit of pressure. There's always a little bit of uncertainty when you come back from an international break. How are your players going to fare? What's their condition like? How are they going to kind of reintegrate back into club football? And then, of course, it's the North London derby, which always brings a pressure, an expectation, particularly when it's the home game from our side of things anyway, that we're going to go out there and do the job and put Tottenham to the sword. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting week this for the Arsenal because, you know, we play Tottenham on Sunday. We then play Bayern Munich on the Wednesday, and then we play Chelsea away, which is a very difficult game as well. So these are three, I don't want to say season defining games, but they're three games that if we can come through relatively unscathed, will give people a lot of confidence with regards to our chances of going on and achieving all the things that we want to see the team achieve over the course of this season. Look, the Bayern game, which we're going to preview in its own right when we get closer to the time, feels like the one right now that I would sacrifice. And I know that I got a lot of stick, actually, for saying something very similar about the Slavia Prague game. I remember saying that we had Sunderland coming up at the weekend. We got loads of injuries, loads of problems. And I remember saying something along the lines of, I would make more changes. I would rotate even more so. And I would essentially sacrifice that game because I feel like in the Champions League, we're in a really strong position. We're in a great place. And this new format, it allows margin for error. It does. And I felt like we could probably get away with making those changes and still have nicked some sort of result from Prague. Against Bayern, I think we might have to go, do you know what? We're going to have to make a few changes. And whether people like it or not, I don't really care. I think Mikel Arteta has got to manage this very smartly. And he's got to be really clever and acknowledge the fact that we've got a lot of players missing right now. I'm not saying throw the game. I'm not saying nobody should care about the game. I'm not saying anything of the sort. But I think if you've got some decisions to make, if there are players that are touch and go, if there are players who are 50-50, you have got to prioritize the two league games either side of that game against Bayern Munich. And maybe this is me talking from a place of PTSD. I don't know, because if you go back to the year where we sort of fell apart after that Villa defeat at home. Do you remember? That was a game that was sandwiched in between the home and the away legs against Bayern. I remember it really clearly. And I remember at the time, and I often bring this up, and it's not an excuse, but it just highlights and indicates, I think, how you just need a little bit of luck along the way sometimes. That week, we played Bayern at home. Then we played Villa in the league. We messed up the Villa game. And then obviously we went to Bayern for the away leg. And of course, we were eliminated from the Champions League. But that week felt really pivotal because we dropped points in the league that proved to be really key in the end. And of course, we were eliminated from the Champions League. And we were just really unfortunate, I felt, with the way that the fixtures fell, that we had to play a very good Aston Villa side in between those home and away legs. Whereas Manchester City, who were playing Real Madrid during that week, had a game sandwiched in between against Luton Town. And that was a game that was very winnable, a game that they could win without really exerting themselves, a game in which they could make multiple changes and still get through it. And again, it's not an excuse, but sometimes you just need those little things to go your way. When they don't go your way, and this has not gone our way, when you look at the fixtures that we've got now, because it's Tottenham, Bayern, and it's Chelsea, You've got to make a decision somewhere. And I'm not saying that you should ever go into any game without wanting to win, without going and giving your best. But I think you've got to be realistic sometimes and zoom out. We constantly moan about the volume of fixtures. We constantly moan about the schedule. And we have every right to do that as football fans, not just Arsenal fans, because we are seeing these really, in my opinion, silly schedules and all the rest of it. We're seeing it impact in so many ways: volume of injuries, quality of matches, football burnout, oversaturation of our sport. There's so many factors. And I just think that if you're Mikel Arteta and you've got the injury problems that we have right now, you might have to make some sort of decision around the Bayern Munich game, one that perhaps involves you leaving a couple of players out, depending on how they fare against Tottenham at the weekend, depending on how that goes as well. If we lose to Tottenham, which is obviously the unthinkable right now, but if we did, then I'd say no, go and give it everything against Bayern, because we need to get back on track. So I'm looking at it from where we are today, and I'm saying if we were to draw with Bayern or even be beaten, I don't think that is going to have a major impact on our Champions League chances. Whereas if we were to drop points against Tottenham or Chelsea, that could potentially have huge ramifications on the title race. So it's just about prioritizing for me. I know not everyone's going to like that, but I felt we should have done something similar against Prague. We didn't. We won in Prague. We then went and dropped points at Sunderland. I'm not saying we dropped points at Sunderland because we didn't do what I suggested in Prague, but we were burnt out by the end of that Sunderland game. That was clear for everybody to see. We were making uncharacteristically bad mistakes at the back. We were switched off at the back, things that we haven't seen from this Arsenal team pretty much all season, because we were burnt out. And so maybe had we been a little bit fresher going into that game, maybe we'd have taken all 3 points. I don't know. I can only speculate. But I feel like we built a squad to equip us to compete on multiple fronts. But that squad, it's being tested right now. It's being pushed to its absolute limits, not in every area of the pitch, but in certain areas of the pitch. And I think we've got to acknowledge that, and we've got to think about that a little bit when we're making decisions around some really, really important upcoming games. Look, there's been a lot of chat on social media and online over the last 24 hours about injuries. Okay. Lots of people telling me, don't worry, Harry, we're going to have some attackers back for the game against Tottenham. Who? You know, at the moment, there's no indication that Victor Gyökeres is going to make it. Some people are saying that Noni Madueke might make it, which, yeah, would be good news. Gabriel Jesus has been in training for a bit, which has led to some people suggesting that he might even be on the bench on Sunday. Again, I don't know these things to be true. I don't know that Madueke will be available. I don't know that Gabby Jesus is even in contention at the moment. Kai Havertz, it doesn't look like he's going to be back any time within the next week or so, which is disappointing because I hoped he would be. It doesn't look like Martin Odegaard's going to be back. And obviously, we're awaiting an update from Mikel Arteta. He's given a press conference on Friday afternoon, which will be interesting. Looking forward to hearing from him. But at the same time, there's a part of me that knows what Mikel Arteta is like and knows that he's probably not going to give much away regardless. So are we going to be any wiser come, say, 2 p.m. on Friday? Probably not. Probably not. But I feel like we've got a lot of issues in attack that are starting to cause us a problem. I know there's a lot of love for Mikel Merino in the room, and I understand why. When he gets a chance, he often takes it. In terms of instinctive finishers, he's up there with the very best in this group. Nobody's denying that or questioning that. But what I will say is this. We lose a lot in terms of our all-round game when Mikel Merino plays up front. And that's not a slight on him. He's not a striker. He's not a centre forward. But we lose that mobility. We don't have that player that can make runs in behind, that can stretch people. We don't have that sort of same instinct in terms of movement and the way that we occupy centre halves when a Victor Gyökeres or even a Kai Havertz isn't playing. Even a Gabby Jesus, he does it in a different way, but he's still able and capable of occupying and dribbling and things that Mikel Merino just isn't. So I am trying really, really hard to fight against the kind of the doom and gloom stuff, because I don't feel like we should be acting like that. I don't feel like we should be looking down at the ground, almost Ange Postecoglou style, with a look of resignation on our faces because we've got a few injuries. Because this was a squad that was built to deal with this. And I think in most areas, we will be able to deal with this. And we'll come on to talk a little bit about why I say that and why I'm adamant about that as the show goes on. Quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, if you are watching us on YouTube, please do leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. And if you haven't done that hype the video thing, do that as well, because apparently that really, really helps. And yeah, hype points are a thing, apparently. So please do get yourself involved in that sense. Just a quick update for our Patreons as well. Thank you to everyone who's signed up and who's supporting the pod at the moment. If you'd like to become a Chronicles of a Gooner patron, you will get access to our private Discord server, which was created yesterday. And we've got a few of our lovely patrons who are willing to kind of put a bit of work in on the Discord server and keep it as active as these things should be. And the reason we're going to do that is because I want to spark conversation among us. I want to have those debates. I want to have those discussions. I want your constant input on the show. So check us out, patreon.com/the Chronicles of a Gooner. You get access to our Discord server. You get access to bonus content, exclusive episodes that are only available to our patrons. And you get every single podcast episode completely ad-free, which I know to a lot of people is quite a big deal. So go and check us out, patreon.com/the Chronicles of a Gooner. If you are an existing patron, you will have a message in your inbox with the Discord link, the invite link. Please come and join it if you haven't done so already. And if you're a YouTube member, then you will also be able to find that link by going to the community tab on the Chronicles of a Gooner channel, and you'll be able to find it from there. But as I said to you guys yesterday, if you are a YouTube member, you're better off switching over to Patreon because you get more bang for your buck and it's cheaper, and all of it goes to, not all of it, a little bit goes to Patreon, but the vast majority of it goes to what it's supposed to, which is supporting the pod, rather than YouTube taking their big sort of, what's the word, corporate cut, shall we say. But yeah, check it out. Check it out. Amberly says, how the hell do you hype a video? I don't think you could do it while the stream is live. I think it's something that you have to do once the video ends, but you go down to where the comments and the live chat bits are on your phone and you scroll across and it gives you the option to hype the video. But yeah, it caught me out for a bit as well. I didn't even know it was a thing. People were talking about it in the comments and I was like, what the hell is this? Anyway, let's move on then to some of the stories that we're going to cover off today, because there's a few that I want to get through. Okay, so Arsenal have announced that the club's 8-season partnership with Visit Rwanda will end in June. If you go on the Arsenal website, there is a statement. Richard Garlick is quoted there, and there's some information about how this partnership's gone, what was achieved during it, etc., etc. But we all know, without getting into the politics of it, that this has been quite a controversial thing because of what's going on in that part of the world. I think Arsenal have done the right thing by reaching a mutual agreement to terminate this partnership, sponsorship, if you like, because ultimately you can't be associated with terrible things. And I'm not saying that Rwanda is a terrible place or that the people are terrible. No, of course, I'm not saying that. But obviously, without going into the politics, there is a lot of background to this. That's why there's been the outrage about it. That's why there's been so many conversations about it. And I think, when you're in this kind of partnership, it's not easy to just cut it off without legal ramifications and all the rest of it. So it was always going to take a little bit of time for us to get to the place where, we're talking about it and saying, it's done and it's fine. So yeah, the partnership's ended. Arsenal have announced that. You can go and read more about it on the Arsenal website. As I say, I'm not going to get into the political side of it because I don't understand it. And I'll be talking from a place of ignorance. And we all know that that's not helpful. Some of you would argue that I talk from a place of ignorance when I'm talking about football as well. But I'm willing to put my neck on the line for that. Anyway, elsewhere, we have been hearing about Kai Havertz and his injury, but not through Arsenal Football Club, not through Mikel Arteta. Julian Nagelsmann has been speaking about the German international. He says Kai Havertz has had a minor relapse on his injury, but overall, he's doing well. He's expected to return towards the end of the year. Now, some people pointed out to me yesterday that it is already towards the end of the year, so he might be back tomorrow. No, I don't think that's the case. I think that Kai Havertz is someone who, we all want back desperately, and someone that we've wanted back for quite some time, because I think we've all recognized that we've probably overworked Victor Gyökeres a little bit. That Victor Gyökeres could do with the support that Arsenal could do with an alternative. Because when we went into the summer, one of the big things was, look, Mikel Merino's done an admirable job whenever he's been asked with filling in up front, and it's fine, and nobody's knocking him or being critical of him. But we all know that you shouldn't, a club in our position, a club competing for what we're competing for, you shouldn't have to stick Mikel Merino up front. But we found ourselves in that situation, and that increased the want and the need for Arsenal to go out and get a centre forward in the summer. They go and get him. They go get Victor Gyökeres. In he comes. He's had a little bit of I don't want to say a difficult start, because I think that's unfair, but it has had its ups and downs. There have been points where people have questioned Victor Gyökeres, whether it was the right signing, whether he's good enough to do it at this level. I think over time, people have learned to appreciate what it is that Victor Gyökeres brings. And I think for me, I wasn't really surprised. I've said this many times before. I knew what Victor Gyökeres was. I'd seen quite a bit of him. I knew that at times he could be a little bit untidy, not the easiest on the eye, but I also knew that he could be effective, and I think he has been effective. He scored 6 or so goals for the club, which is obviously a decent start to the season. But on top of that, I think he's really brought a different dynamic, which is essentially what we were after. Probably more so than the kind of one-man goal machine. Because we're not that as a team. We're not Manchester City with Haaland. We're a team that does do things as a collective, and that's the way that the team's been built. We want output from everybody. We want output from the wingers, from the midfielders, from the defenders, from set pieces, etc., etc. And generally, we do manage that. A few more goals from a centre forward would be a huge help, absolutely. But I do feel for Victor Gyökeres, because I don't think he gets this injury that he's got now. I don't think he ends up sort of running himself into the ground by sort of the start of November, if he's got someone to share some of those minutes with, while he's making that step up in terms of physical level from the Portuguese top flight to the Premier League. So Kai Havertz's injury and absence has had an impact on Gyökeres too. I hope that Kai Havertz will be back after this international break. We know he's superhuman in terms of physically. We know that he fights and works himself back to fitness a lot quicker than most others. To read that he'd had a kind of minor relapse yesterday was disappointing, but it might only set him back a week or two. Who knows, right? We don't know. Julian Nagelsmann was very scarce on the detail. I suppose it comes as a bit of a surprise, because Arsenal have been so tight-lipped about Kai Havertz and his return. And they've been, I think, very, very careful not to commit to clear return dates for pretty much all of the players that are absent at the moment. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But I think when you read something like this and it doesn't come from the club, it's a little bit frustrating. I don't know that if I was Mikel Arteta, I'd be overly pleased with Julian Nagelsmann sharing this. But at the same time, if he's being questioned about why Kai Havertz isn't involved in the German setup, then he probably thinks, well, what the hell? Why can't I say that he's had a little bit of a relapse, that he's had a little bit of a setback? He's expected to return towards the end of the year. What does that mean? I mean, it could be next week. That would, I suppose, be classed as towards the end of the year. It could be in 2-3 weeks' time, but we need him back ASAP. And I think with the growing feeling that Victor Gyökeres doesn't, make it for the North London derby, again, that's not been confirmed, but that's what the sort of feeling appears to be around Arsenal circles right now. That does increase the desire and the want to see Kai Havertz back and the need to get Kai Havertz back. But again, at the same time, right, you bring this guy back after months on the sidelines. What's his level going to be? Is he going to be able to come into a North London derby and play at the level required straight away? Maybe not. So we've got to be really, really mindful of this stuff. And I think where everybody's sort of starting to lose their heads and their minds a little bit is because everything's so unclear. And I know that you can set a target. You don't always meet those targets. But if, for instance, we were told Kai Havertz is going to be back in December, or Martin Odegaard's going to be back in December, or we're aiming to have them back in December, you kind of take a step back and you go, okay, not ideal. Let's get through the games that we've got coming up with what we have. And we look forward to welcoming those players back. And if you hear that they're going to be delayed a week or 2 weeks as you get closer to that mark, yeah, it's frustrating. But right now, the kind of uncertainty is stressing people out. And what uncertainty does is it puts you in a place where you start to think about the worst case scenario. So for instance, right, we heard about Gabriel yesterday, and we'll come on to that in a minute. And people say, yeah, it's 1 to 2 months. Most people's reaction to that will be, oh my God, he's going to be out for 2 months. Because we have a tendency, I think, as human beings, a lot of us anyway, to think about the worst case scenario and the worst possible instance. So, yeah, I think a little bit more clarity around when these guys are expected to come back. And I know the medical team or Arsenal Football Club would probably push back and say, well, we don't have a definitive return date. So we can't give you that. We can't provide you with that. But the lack of even an estimate really is what I think is going to lead to people essentially losing their minds a little bit. And ultimately, it was said a while back that, we were hoping to have some of these players back after the international break. Yeah, okay, if they come back next week or the week after or the week after that, it's classed as after the international break. But I think people took that, myself included, in a way of, well, okay, hopefully by the time we return from this international break, those players will be fit and available to us. But Kai Havertz has apparently suffered a minor relapse, but overall he's doing well. What else have we got in the chat on this? Because there's quite a bit of reaction to this. Kay West said, Hand of Arsenal said on the Latte firm that Kai is on track, so I wouldn't read too much into it. Maybe not, but it's that uncertainty that I keep talking about. Theo says you always have to add Arsenal injury tax to our injuries as well. Yeah, and look, we'll come on to talk about the Gabriel thing in just a minute. But before we do that, we're going to take a very, very brief pause, a very, very short break. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hype the video. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, please do leave us a review. All of that stuff really, really does help. And check us out on Patreon. You won't be disappointed, I promise. Go over to it, patreon.com/The Chronicles of a Gooner. Short pause, and we'll be back. And we're going to talk Big Gabby, as well as me giving you a bit of a kind of rallying cry ahead of that North London derby, which is coming up on Sunday. Can't wait for it.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Just a very, very quick story. Most people won't care about this, but I thought I'd share it because that little video, that little clip of my son saying like and subscribe, it just reminded me of something. We went to the Brazil-Senegal game at the Emirates Stadium at the weekend, and one of the stewards recognized him. And he came up to him and he said, "Hey, are you the kid from the podcast?" And my son was so excited. He was like, "Dad, am I famous?" And I was like, "No, you're not famous, son. Just the gentleman happens to be a viewer or a listener of the pod," which is amazing. But yeah, he was so gassed about that. He was so excited. Anyway, okay, let's move on, shall we? Let's talk Gabriel Magalhaes. Obviously, we were all gutted, disappointed, frustrated to see him have to come off during that Brazil game that I referenced there. And, the hope was that this wouldn't be as serious as first feared. The hope was that it was just a twinge, a tweak, and that Big Gabby, had maybe thought that there was something in it and sort of went down and had that really disappointed look on his face. But ultimately, when he sat down and had his scans and all the rest of it, there would have been a finding that was just a little bit more positive than what we've seen reported so far, in that he might miss 2-3 weeks, but he could be back very, very soon. David Ornstein reported yesterday that Arsenal are continuing to assess Gabriel amid concerns that the 27-year-old could miss 1 to 2 months through an injury sustained on international duty. Initial indications suggest that the Arsenal centre-back is set for a spell out, but the tests are ongoing. Okay, so this is obviously really crap news and really frustrating news, okay? People say, 1 to 2 months, it's not that long. In football terms, it's a long time. If you think about the fact that we play Spurs, Bayern Munich, and Chelsea in the space of a week, that in itself shows you that 2 months in football is a very, very long time. And to be without, for me, our best defender and someone that is super impactful for Arsenal at both ends of the pitch is a blow. It's a huge blow. We hope for the best case scenario, but the potential of 2 months is a very real one. The potential of him being out for 2 months is a very, very real one. And that worries me and it concerns me. But I do think we need to grow a pair a little bit here as a fan base. I really, really do. I love Big Gabby. I think that he's probably the most important player in that back line. And I know Julian Timber's been amazing this season. And obviously William Saliba's an excellent player as well. But Big Gabby is the guy in a lot of ways. He leads in many ways. He sets example in many ways. He sort of he's got so much going for him. He's such an amazing player. Lots of people are divided on how this has happened, how we've got to this point. There's some people that are super critical of Mikel Arteta who say that he's run him into the ground over the last few years and he's made him vulnerable and susceptible to this type of injuries. But there are others who think that maybe Gabby should have, having had to have his load managed, as was reported the other day, should have said, no, I can't play. But he's not that type of guy. And what you're doing, if you're saying that, is you're expecting him to throw the towel in, and he won't do that. Him playing for Brazil is a big deal. He's not always been a shoo-in in this Brazilian team. And so to get to that place with the World Cup on the horizon, it's important to him. And I just don't think you can sit, and I've said this before, I don't want to repeat myself, but I just don't think you can sit and blame any one individual for this. This is a culmination of multiple factors. It's a multifaceted issue. That's what I described it as the other day, and I truly believe that. But as much as losing Big Gabby is a big deal, okay, and it is. There's no question about it. He's one of the best centre halves in the world. Any team that is without him is going to miss him. Okay, that's factual. There's no beating around the bush here. There's no trying to kind of package it up in a nicer way. That's the reality. When you've got a player that's that good and he's not available, it's a problem and it weakens you. But some of the meltdowns I've seen with regards to this are ridiculous. We are a team who went out in the summer and added the depth to make ourselves serious. Okay, and we all were super positive about that. We all lauded Arsenal's efforts. We were all full of praise for what Arsenal did in the transfer window to protect against this kind of thing. Now, if you're worried about the top end of the pitch right now, where we've got, as far as we're aware, no Martinelli, no Madueke, no Odegaard, no Gyökeres, no Havertz, no Jesus. If you're worried about that end of the pitch, I appreciate that. And I understand that. And I think you have every right to worry whether we have enough right now available to us to maintain the level of performance that's going to be required to go all the way and win this Premier League. But at the back, we're well equipped. I'm not saying that anyone that will come in will be as good or as impactful or have as bigger influence in terms of leadership as Gabriel. But look at the options that we're talking about bringing in to replace him. We're talking about Christian Mosquera, who we've all been blown away by at the start of this season in terms of the way he's come in and settled in. And we're talking about Piero Hincapié, an invincible with Bayer Leverkusen, someone who's won silverware, someone who represents their country with distinction and has done for years. someone who's been around the block, someone who is regarded as one of the best defenders in world football. So it's not like, with all due respect to him, we're bringing Rob Holding in again, or Socrates, or Mustafi, with all due respect to those players. We are much better equipped to cope with this than we have been in previous years. And let me tell you this, Arsenal can't afford to sit around feeling sorry for themselves right now. We can't afford to be sitting there going over the injury list over and over and over again. We can't, okay? Because we're in the thick of it now. We're going into the Christmas period, arguably the most challenging period of the Premier League season. We've got cover. They have to step in and they have to do what they were brought to this football club to do, which is integrate into the squad, become a part of the first team when necessary, and when given that opportunity, perform. Perform. Because let me tell you this, Piero Hincapié didn't come to Arsenal to sit on the bench every week. Christian Mosquera didn't come to Arsenal to be a bit part player for the rest of his career. No. These guys came to try and force their way into the Arsenal side. And they've got an opportunity now to do that, because Arsenal are going to be without one of the first names on the team sheet for a long period of time now. So come in, grab the opportunity with both hands, perform, and let's keep going. You know, I get it when we're talking about the attacking end of the pitch. I do. I get the overreaction because it's not 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or even 5 players missing. We've got 6, 7 attacking players missing. That's hugely problematic. But at the back end of the pitch, we've got cover. We've got quality cover. We've got depth. So let them come in, get behind them. The mentality shouldn't change. We love defending. Hincapié loves defending. Mosquera loves defending. None of them are Gabriel Magalhaes, but they're both fantastic players. Bring them into the team. There's no excuses. There's no time to be feeling sorry for ourselves. Is this ideal? No, but you can only play with the cards that you've been dealt. And these are the cards that we've been dealt. You can sit and you can moan about medical staff and the manager and Carlo Ancelotti and Brazil's role in this and maybe Gabriel's role in this. You can do that until the cows come home. But none of that matters because we can't afford to let this title challenge crumble or fall apart. We went out in the summer and brought these players in to protect against this. And we all sat there and said, wow, look at the squad. Look at the depth that we have. So now what? The depth isn't good enough. The depth that we were celebrating just a few months ago, what? It's not good enough anymore. Now, it might prove not to be good enough over the course of time. But why are we throwing the towel in already? People outside of Arsenal circles, and I got into a debate about this yesterday on the club. People outside of Arsenal circles, do you know what they do whenever we drop points or don't win a game? You know what the first thing they do is they go, Arsenal's soft, man. The mentality is just not there. And I always push back on that because I always say, well, you can't measure mentality. You can't measure it. So basically what you're doing is overlooking and ignoring all the tactical and talent issues, and you're just pointing to mentality because it's an easy stick to grab and beat Arsenal with. No. We have to show people that that's not the case. We have to show people that when we lose one player in our defensive line, we're going to be fine. We're going to push. We're going to continue in the same vein. Do we have to do things a little bit differently? Maybe. Do we lose Gabriel's threat from set pieces? Yeah, of course we do. But we got to do so much more if we're going to go and win this Premier League title. We got to keep going. We got to keep pushing. We got to keep fighting. And let me tell you this, it moves so fast. 2 weeks ago, Arsenal were cruising to the Premier League title. A week later, Manchester City cut that gap to a point where now they're only 4 points behind us. And if we go to the Etihad and we get beat in Feb, I think it is, when we go there, that gap becomes 1 point. 1 point only. We haven't got a cushion. There's no time to rest on our laurels. We can't afford to do that. We got to keep going, keep pushing, keep fighting. And for me, nobody should be petrified of Piero Hincapié coming in. Nobody should be petrified of Christian Mosquera coming in. Because I'll tell you this now, there are not many clubs with that level of depth, with that level of quality to call upon when their standout centre-half is injured. We're in that position because the club were willing to go and put their money where their mouth was in the summer and do deals that we would have said were not even the priority. You think about it, right? We signed Christian Mosquera, and I went, okay, one for the future. Lovely. Then we signed the rest of the players that we did, and we got towards the end of the window, and I thought that Eberechi Eze was the last one. And then bang, Arsenal went and got Piero Hincapié. Why? Because they recognized the importance of having depth. Well, now Piero Hincapié has the opportunity to step up, and do his thing. So let's not sit there and feel sorry for ourselves. We haven't got time to do that. We can't afford to do that. And that is what breeds a loser mentality. And some of our fans will be nervous and they'll be worried and they'll be concerned. And that's fine, because that's in a fan's nature. I go into every game with a sick feeling in my stomach, even when everybody else says we're going to cruise through that game. That's just what we do as fans. But sometimes you have to wake up and you have to smell the coffee and you have to realize what we have versus others. Okay? Nobody's going to tell me that Liverpool have the depth at centre-back that we do. They don't. They don't. Virgil van Dijk, Konate, and beyond that, no one is as good as Hincapié. No one is as good as Mosquera has been this season. We've also got Ben White that can play at centre-back in a worst-case scenario. You could even put Julian Timber in there and put Ben White at right-back. Calafiori could go in at left centre-back with Miles Lewis-Skelly playing at left-back. We've got options. We've got options, man. We've got strength and depth in that area of the park. As I keep saying, at the top end of the pitch, we're down to the bare bones. We're threadbare, and I understand the concern around that. But one defensive injury should not derail us. And if we start to believe it will, and if we start to sort of accept mediocrity as a result of that player and constantly going, well, we were without him, we were without him, we were without him. In previous seasons, I get it. In previous seasons, I'd have been on that side of the fence, but not now. Not now. Not now. Okay, I think that's the end of my my speech / rant, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, let's take another really short pause, and when we come back, we'll take some of your questions and your thoughts from the live chat. I'd love to hear from you. Short pause, and we'll be back in just a moment.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. If you're with us on YouTube and you haven't done so already, that really, really does help. Also, you can check us out on Patreon, and you can leave us a review on Apple or Spotify as well. Okay, let's dive into the chat box, shall we, and see what you guys are saying. Okay, anti-clockwise says, what constitutes a bad result in this game, H? Is it nothing but a win, or would a draw be not a disaster in the context considering injuries? No, I think we got to win it. I think you got to win your home games, especially against the likes of Tottenham, with all due respect. I can accept home draws against City, against Liverpool. I don't accept it against Tottenham. I think it is a must-win game. And Manchester City go away to Newcastle this weekend. So I'm not saying they're going to drop points, but there's a potential that they do. There's the potential that Eddie Howe's side could take something off them. I know they haven't had a great season so far, but at home, St. James's Park, evening kickoff, it's a potential banana skin. If it wasn't, we wouldn't have celebrated winning there as much as we did. So I think we've got to win. And I think, look, if City were to draw and then we were to draw, it's not the end of the world. But if we do our bit, that's what we got to do. We've got to do our bit. You know, our fixture on paper, home to Spurs, I know it's a derby and all that, I think is easier than the one that City faced at the weekend. So I think we got to win. Angel says, love your passion, Harry. I completely agree. Joe says, great speech, Harry. William Wallace. You know what? Braveheart is a sick film. I haven't watched it in such a long time. But yeah. Afzar says, now that Big Gabby is injured, does that mean we will have to attack and create more from open play? Yeah, and other people will have to step up. Why can't Saliba attack a set piece? Why can't Hincapié attack a set piece? Why can't Marino attack a set piece? You can't rely on one guy. You just can't. You can't. What have we got? MB says, the problem is injuries seem to continue. Without the key players, we ain't going anywhere. What is going on at this club? Arteta needs to assess his coaching style. It is devastating. I kind of get where you're coming from, but it's a bit like what I was saying about the referees yesterday. I don't like sitting here and saying you're to blame when I don't know that you're to blame. You know, they barely train in between games at the moment, but everybody keeps saying that we're overworking them in training. You know, it was explained to us very, very clearly, not just by Arsenal people, but by many within the footballing world in recent times, that the short turnaround time between games is leading to a lack of training because recovery has to take precedent. And that means that we're not training the muscles. And then when we go into game scenarios where the intensity is much higher and is at a level that just cannot be replicated in training, people are picking up muscular injuries. Could we do more to prevent it? Absolutely. I'm sure we could. I think you can always do better. But again, I don't want to sit there and go, it's Arteta. Equally, I don't want to sit there and say it's the physios, it's the doctors. Because I don't know. I'm not across that enough. Steve Stone says, I really don't understand modern day fans. I really don't. I enjoy football. It makes me happy when we win a game. Many ignore that and have a meltdown worrying about the end of the season. I think you're right, mate. I think you're right. Guitar Solo says, with my Jid hat on, Jid, one of our regular listeners, he says, if Zubimendi was injured and Christian Norgard was coming in, would you be rallying around him the same as you are in Capier, Mosquera and White? Or would you be doom and gloom about the amount of drop-off? I wouldn't be doom and gloom because I don't think Christian Norgard's a bad player, but I'd be concerned about how we replicate what Zubimendi brings to the team in terms of that ball progression. I think there's a bigger drop-off between Zubi and Norgard than there is between our first-choice centre-backs and some of the cover that we've got available to us. So I wouldn't be having a meltdown, but I'd certainly be more concerned than I am about this. Amberly says, spot on, Harry. A lot of our fans are absolute wet wipes who melt down over every single thing. I ain't going to call anyone a wet wipe, but I just want to see a bit of, like, we keep talking about, or we hear people constantly talking about the mentality of the team. Where's our mentality? Where's our fight? Like, why do we have to create these kind of negative vibes around everybody? You know, every time something doesn't go our way, I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I'm going to take a couple more of your comments. Olu says, I don't think we'll start in Capier after he plays a full 90 in the international games. The back four will probably be Timber, Mosquera, Saliba and Calafiori. And if it is, it is. If it is, it is. Is anybody majorly concerned by that? Because I'm not. And that's why I made the point that we've got those two options there, plus Calafiori playing inside if we need him to, with Miles Lewis-Skelly playing at left back, plus Ben White and Julian Timber as well. So we've got options, guys. We've got options. Okay, do you know what? I think I'm going to sign out. I think that sort of impassioned rant, if you want to call it that, it took it all out of me. It really, really did. But we'll be back, of course, tomorrow with another full episode. And, of course, we will start previewing and building up to that huge North London derby coming up at the weekend. I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Up the Arsenal. Goodbye.
Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Simi U time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a